All right, looks like we're live. Let me double check here. Volume looks good. All right. We'll go over a variety of different charts today. Of course, we'll cover Bitcoin. We'll cover some stock charts. Zoom out on Bitcoin a little bit. Let me just get the chat pulled up here. Guys, if you haven't joined our Towns community yet, I recommend doing so. That is our paid community that is similar to Discord, but it's on blockchain rails. Very excited for that. We've got over 370 members already. I think we've got 500 slots opened up, so there's a little over 100 slots left. So if you want to join our community, make sure you do so. And let's just see if we can pull up the chat. There we go. Cool. All right, let's cover Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's in a weird spot, I think mainly because this whale has been selling brutally. We have lost our range. So our horizontal range, I've got kind of a messy chart here. Horizontal range low is around 16.4 with the range high kind of up here at all-time high. You could maybe draw it down here at 120. 120 is kind of a big level. So we'll just like leave 120 there. Let me get rid of this red squiggle. I've kind of got some support regions highlighted down here. I'm not married to any of them. What we want to see is a range reclaim. Range reclaim is one of the most bullish things that you can do or price action can do in a bullish trend is turn this into a deviation, reclaim the range, and move to the top. All right, we've talked at length on these streams about range reclaims. We've seen some recent ones in action for Ethereum, and you've seen how Ethereum's performed off of range reclaims. So we want to see Bitcoin above, and really there's just kind of, this is kind of a zone, this is 116.4, but you could maybe kind of draw this as high as, 116.7. So we really just want to see Bitcoin shove back into this range, start consolidating above it, then we can go and make another attempt at the top of our range. Remember, when we reclaim a range, the high probability trade, the high probability outcome is to move to the top of your range. And right now we are just trading outside of our range, currently trying to reclaim. One interesting thing that's been going on is through all of this selling that has been occurring, all this spot selling from this Bitcoin whale, there's been a very, very strong bid, both spot and perp, but predominantly a perp bid that has gotten filled today. That has gotten filled since, like essentially last night. So a lot of longs came in here. A lot of longs came in on this this region, which can be bullish, but it can also be bearish if this thing continues to fall down. That's a rough outcome for those longs. Potentially leads to some sort of liquidation cascade. But for right now, if Bitcoin can push back up above 116, 117, I'd lean bullish. Here's another example. It's a smaller range, but a range reclaim nonetheless. Right? You had this deviation. One of the most obvious ones of all time. One of the cleanest range reclaims that you'll ever see on any chart anywhere was Bitcoin back here after the ETF was launched. The longs got carried out in a body bag, and then the shorts got carried out in a body bag. But this deviation and reclaim looks very similar to our current Bitcoin market structure, except for the deviation was kind of front loaded, right? And then you had all this chop before we've kind of fallen below. But we had some upside here. Breakout got stuffed on the ETF launch. You had a lot of Bitcoin being sold off thanks to the Grayscale ETF outflows. Then you kind of had this deviation below. We kind of had this little bull flag here in the short-term time frames, and then a big reclaim. And once we made that big reclaim, you could have longed that and just had a ton of upside all the way to 73K, right? So things looked very bleak here, but when we reclaimed our range, if you just longed that candle, you were really never outside of profit. You had to sit in this consolidation for a while. But oftentimes after you get a range reclaim, you do have a consolidation. I think we just had one, recently. Try to find it from the 75K lows. Not as clean of a range, but you had, this, whoops, this kind of support level down at like, 78K or whatever. You had your double bottom, weird deviation below it. We were longing down here in the Sistine Research Discord. The Discord's now migrated to Towns. But then you have this nice, clean consolidation above the range once you reclaimed it. That's really what the pattern that we're looking for here is. We are looking for a reclaim of this range on Bitcoin. Let's move into the hourly. We're looking for a reclaim of this range and then a nice flag, a nice consolidation, little inverse head and shoulders here into a bull flag, and then further continuation. I'd like to see that happen over the weekend. I'd like to see this reclaim tonight. And then I'd like to see this consolidation occur over the weekend. And then I'd like to see a very strong push on Monday morning. So we really do need to see if we're going to have this Bitcoin whale run out of Bitcoin to sell, or some of that selling taper off. I've seen some reports that they're mostly sold. Can't confirm that. But that is hopefully the path that we take for Bitcoin. Ethereum's been pretty bullish as well. I think ETH looks good here, just in a normal consolidation. It's not been weak, probably in large part because there's treasury companies buying it. There's ETF inflows that have been very, very strong. And you don't have a big whale selling off all their ETH like you do with Bitcoin. So ETH, I think, just probably needs to consolidate a little bit more, but we're seeing a pretty tight consolidation up here. Beneath range highs. You want to see this kind of continue to flag tightly, run into range highs, maybe take them out and flag above or below, and then just continue onwards and upwards. The good thing about this little pause here on the daily RSI is it does give some time for ETH RSI to reset. It does give some time for it to reset. The 4 hour back at the 50 level, so we've gotten a full 4 hour reset on RSI for ETH. The daily is still a little bit overheated, but we know we can stay up here for some time. We can do this, and we can continue to run to 4 or 5K before RSI, before the daily RSI kind of needs to calm down. So ETH, I remain pretty bullish here. XRP has been a little bit finicky here, but this is kind of the fractal that I'm looking at to hopefully follow. This was the all-time high break on this fractal was the all-time high break of Bitcoin, breaking 20K. So we had this, this big run. You kind of had this wedge that broke up into some distribution. This distribution had a nice little uptrend. It broke down, slammed back down into the top of this wedge. That's where we're at right now. And hopefully this holds. If the fractal continues, we get some sort of consolidation before further upside. So for XRP here, I'm looking to reclaim and looking to see this north of 330, 340, maybe a little bleed, and then hopefully some upside into early to mid-August. If this fractal holds up to any degree. I do think that XRP is more than likely going to try to put a bottom in here. If we look at RSI, we're starting to see some bullish divergence into, I know this is a messy chart, some bullish divergence on the hourly and 4 hour. So if Bitcoin can reclaim, I think XRP will be just fine. The other thing is, I think, this is something that's come a little bit more to my attention recently, is how useful it is so apparently a lot of volume for XRP comes out of Korea. For anybody who didn't know that. So I've been charting XRP versus the Korean won. And on the US dollar, we actually came up and we deviated this prior all-time high, $3.40. We took that out and we traded as high as 365. But if you chart this against the Korean won, this was just a double top. This was just a rotation up to range highs. And the chart's actually much cleaner against the Korean won. We have a much cleaner range here. You can see we had this, two of these deviations, but this most recent one, what happened? Right? On this range reclaim, we traveled all the way back up to the top of our range. Right? But we haven't broken out to all-time highs yet. We haven't broken out to price discovery yet. What we want to see here is this flag below all-time highs before breaking. We want to let the RSI calm back down, the daily RSI on XRP versus the Korean won. And all the way back down to 58. This is good as long as we hold. This allows us to load up for another huge run. The 4-hour RSI oversold. This could help us, help us bounce back and reclaim, and see this above, 4,500 Korean won, whatever. Not really too concerned with like the price targets on the won, but just the structure of the chart becomes a lot easier to read when you source this back to a country that is doing a lot of XRP volume on Upbit. So much cleaner chart. We want to see this level hold, the level that the lows that we've put in around $3. We want to see that hold, and we want to see this continue to consolidate under all-time high and then break upwards. Once this, this is also if you zoom all the way out, this is the prior all-time high from 2017, 2018. So this would be a very, very big breakout against the Korean won for XRP. This is still yet to make an all-time high. Even though XRP kind of took out its prior all-time high on the US dollar pair, it has not done so on the Korean won chart. So this is something that I'm paying attention to. I do think that once this takes out its all-time high on the won chart, it is going much higher. I think it's going to go much higher. All right, drop a like if you don't mind. It really helps the channel grow. For anybody who's unfamiliar with our stream, we have 5 different traders each day of the week, so 1 trader per day. Also, there's a link in the description to sign up for WeX if you'd like to trade perp futures. If you'd like to trade on leverage, there's a link in the description for WeX. I believe they have some sort of promotion running. They've been our exchange partner for this channel since we kind of rebranded it in partnership with Sin City Crypto. And brought on multiple traders. So big shout out to them. If you want to trade on leverage and you don't have an exchange to trade on, I believe they are friendly to multiple countries and locations. So definitely check them out. All right, so that's XRP. XRP's, this is a very, very bullish chart. This is also just a very clean chart. The XRP versus the Korean won. We've butting up against this all-time high. We want to come down, consolidate, butt up again, and push through. But if you look at the prior cycle high here, look at where we held support, right? The US dollar pair was not as clean as this. This was super clean on the Korean won chart here. Now, could we potentially range all the way back down and still remain bullish? Yes, we could. Hopefully we don't. I think, ideally we want to see this have a tighter consolidation up here before breaking out. But I think when we break out to price discovery on this chart, you are going to want to be long XRP. I think you're going to want to be long XRP. Just even look like here, once we broke out above this resistance, just very, very clean up only breakout. You didn't miss it. You didn't miss it because you didn't long it down at 50 cents with the Sistine Research Discord. We were longing down at 50, 60 cents. But if you waited for structure to break, you could still have jumped in and seen, 350%. Right? So it is still early if this breaks. If this can muster a push and break all-time highs, it is still early in the XRP chart. H-bar, love an H-bar recently. I think it's been running in line with a lot of other suit coins. I put out an email about this a little bit earlier, so you can go to Sistine.ai and sign up for that email list if you would like. Shout out to all the people that were just on the Sin City Crypto channel and came over. Love doing the show. Been doing going on Sin City Crypto for a couple of years now, since they had like 1,000 subscribers. They're the best crypto show on YouTube. So go subscribe to them if you haven't already. But H bar here has a massive pattern. I put out this chart in the newsletter a while ago in a little newsletter that I call Giga Charts. These are huge charts, very, very large multi-year chart patterns. If this breaks the upside, which timing these things is the difficult part, right? Timing these things is the difficult part. But once this thing breaks out, I think it can run 5, 10x. H bar, getting some integrations in the government. I think this is going to be supported by government contracts. Let's continue to scroll here, see if we find anything interesting. HIMS had a nasty fake headline today, kind of caused a little bit of a scare and a sell-off. Something about lawmakers pressuring the FDA on GLP-1s. HIMS, to my knowledge, sources all their GLP-1s responsibly. So this kind of had a big push and then a big liquidation, and then it's kind of leveled out here. I actually think this is a very bullish chart. High time frame. I'm in this chart mainly because of the weekly highs, higher highs and higher lows. This weekly chart has just been on a massive run. Big run, then huge sell-off, and then just weekly higher highs and higher lows, trending upwards. Now it's kind of broken out from this channel. It's trying to make some support on the weekly chart above this prior channel. That would be very bullish. I want to see this thing go parabolic like $200 or $300. That's why I'm in this chart, because I think that it has, but like I like longing things that just have very explosive potential. Some charts just, slowly grind upwards. I like being in charts that just have, this thing's just been channeling and is trying to break out of the top of its channel twice now. Bit of a flagging structure here. I think this thing can run super, super hard if it can break out. It is a lower cap stock. I think it's like a 10 to $15 billion market cap stock, which in the grand scheme of things, this sounds super big in terms of like crypto, but like H bar is 10 billion. So kind of your larger to mid cap cryptocurrencies, that's where this thing lies in terms of market cap, but it's a stock. You start talking about some stocks. I think Palantir is like 500 billion or something. Nvidia is like multiple trillion or over a trillion. So like 10 to 15 billion is still a stock that can see a lot of volatility in terms of price action. This thing doubling or tripling overnight on good earnings, entirely possible. In fact, we've seen that happen before. You saw this thing run from $5 to 25. It's a 5x over the course of 238 days. A little bit of volatility there on the weekly and some of these pullbacks. But then we saw it run from 13 to 72 in 162 days. So I absolutely think this thing has a lot of potential. Tesla has been a very big pain, big thorn in my side, but it is technically just flagging here. Hard to tell whether this thing's going to break up or break down, but for robotics exposure, I do like Tesla. This thing breaks up, targets are pretty high on this. Something like that. You're talking about 450 to maybe, if this is a more extended target, 500, talking about all-time highs here. So if it breaks down, you're looking at, retesting this same support. But really, it's just been the Elon drama that's been so annoying on Tesla. Just kind of scrolling through the watch list a little bit here. Another thing I like to do is keep a spaghetti chart and see what's outperforming. So Tesla and H bar up the most on the day since this morning at like 6 a.m. HIMS up there trying to rally despite the bad fake headline. Solana doing okay today. XRP down here and this black line just kind of trying to struggle back up with a lot of other stuff. But we really just need to see Bitcoin kind of lead the charge there. Hyperliquid in the mix. metals have just been horrendous today. Very, very horrendous day for metals, which is usually a really good time to buy metals. Generally speaking, like metals recently at least have not seen prolonged downside. This is silver, which has been a little bit weaker than gold on the year. Generally speaking, they don't see prolonged downside. They've been bouncing back quite strongly. You see silver earlier in the year on the tariff FUD, just going right into a bull flag, right into some flags here, and then just trying to build some structure up here. But generally speaking, when gold or silver sell off aggressively, you've wanted to be a buyer here. Something I put in the Towns community. So join Towns. There's a link in the description below if you haven't. I posted this chart earlier, but we are approaching. We might not get it. We might not get the 4-hour oversold. 4-hour RSI below 30. But over the past year, if you have been a buyer of gold when RSI dips below 30, when RSI becomes oversold on gold, this was the only one that you got in a little too early and you would have had to double down to come out okay. But this was also after a big run on gold, ABC correction, right? But the 4-hour oversold signals on gold have all been great buys, right? We're in this, this flagging pattern that continues to kind of expand, kind of takes out a little bit of resistance, fakes back down. I would expect this to ultimately hold for gold. Gold. I see no reason why gold should be, crashing. I'm wondering if a little of this might come down to Trump pressuring Jerome Powell to cut rates. If we cut rates, you might see some money rotate out of gold into treasuries. But in the long term, I think gold is always going to be better than U.S. debt. It has been. So, for anybody who would for anybody that would want to hold U.S. debt over gold, let's show them this chart. This is gold versus long-term treasuries going parabolic. Continues to go parabolic. I don't know why anyone would want to hold long-term treasuries over gold. Now, this is starting to kind of flag out a little bit. We'll see. This might take a little while. You might get a little push out of treasuries here if we see rates get cut. Maybe treasuries can outperform gold for a few weeks here, but I would expect ultimately this to just run again pretty hard towards the end of the year. So I'd be looking for gold opportunities to buy gold over treasuries. But I think some of that gold weakness might be coming from some speculation on Trump pressuring Jerome Powell to cut some rates, which could be short term, kind of a little bit bearish for gold on that speculative phase. People worrying that treasuries are going to get bought up and rates are going to come down a little bit. Who's the whale selling Bitcoin? I think the whale selling Bitcoin is very likely Ross Ulbricht. He just got out of prison, and he's somebody like holding 80,000 Bitcoin. You're probably not going to do that unless you're in prison. Like you probably would have sold some along the way. You got to think like 80,000 Bitcoin. If we get out our handy dandy calculator here, 80,000 Bitcoin. When this hit even 10,000 per Bitcoin, you're talking about having $800 million. You're probably going to sell some and take some profits and buy some stuff if you have access to that Bitcoin. But he didn't have access to that Bitcoin more than likely because he was in prison. So, I think I do think that it is very likely Ross Ulbricht, released from prison, founder of the Silk Road, which had tons and tons of Bitcoin. So, I think that's most likely the case. Now that he's out of prison, I mean, like if you got out of prison and you had 80,000 Bitcoin, you'd probably sell it too. Probably sell most of it. It's like, when you're talking about $10 billion, you don't need more. You don't need to hold. You can just take your $10 billion and move on with your life. It does you no good to hold an investment longer. All right, I'm going to check the charts here, or check the chat here for some It's not a whale, it's Galaxy Digital, OTC dumping on exchanges. No, Galaxy Digital has an OTC desk, and that whale transferred to Galaxy Digital. That's not Galaxy Digital's Bitcoin. They're executing the trades for this whale. AMC. Yeah, AMC is I mean, this thing's gonna just continue to bleed unless we get a like a euphoric run, like a big, short squeeze. I'd be more inclined to look at GameStop than AMC, but I mean, this thing has broken its downtrend and might be flagging here. This flag could break up or down, but you're looking at, September probably before this makes a decision, right? One way or another. Yeah, that's quick views on AMC. GameStop now becoming kind of a Bitcoin treasury company. GameStop just has this massive flag. I do think, like, if this thing ever breaks out, right? If this thing ever breaks out, maybe it runs super hard. But it's essentially done nothing. It's essentially done nothing for a while. I had this big run back in, back last summer, but it's been flagging out for a year. Not a lot to say on GameStop, honestly. I think someone wanted to look at Solana. Solana's a tough one. It just has like one of the messier charts. There's your range. Similar to XRP, we've just kind of run up into range highs here. All right, so we defended these range lows. We came out swinging last December. January, Trump launched a meme coin on Solana. Everybody thought this was going a lot higher. Ended up plunging all the way down below range lows. We got our deviation. We got our range reclaim. What happens? What's our rule for range reclaims? You reclaim the range. The most likely thing to happen next is to move back up to range highs. That's what we did. We took two kind of big pushes to get there, but that's what happened. Now we've hit range highs. We didn't deviate, right, and swing, SFP above them. We didn't deviate them. So, like, I'm much more bullish on the idea of moving back to range lows, or not bullish on the idea. I'd be much more bearish if we did this, right? If we deviated the high and then re-entered like we did over here. This is fine for right now. This is fine. We're coming back down, trying to reload onto some support. Trying to reload onto this support. Prior resistance. Trying to flip this into support and develop a nice strong uptrend. Right? We want to see this similar, same thing as XRP, really. We want to see Solana just flag out here. See this build some nice structure. Similar to this structure, but want it to break up rather than down. This is actually like where I think a lot of charts are right now. Like, this looks a lot like the XRP chart. We had this kind of wedge that broke upwards. Big push. Crash back down into the top of the wedge. And I think this is going to build structure and make for another push. Right, so like, let's remove this. Let's just grab this fractal, which is, fractals aren't going to match perfectly. We'll just copy that and stick this on the XRP chart. Let's go to the hourly. This is kind of what I think is going to happen for XRP. It's not perfect, but like the general gist of it is very similar. Gonna have this wedge on, this is the Solana fractal we just grabbed. You have this wedge that breaks upwards. You bleed back down or crash back down into the top of this wedge, right? This wedge here broke up and it distributed. You know, this was not a straight bleed, but, you know, some distribution back into the top of the wedge. And I think this is just going to, you know, I could be wrong here. Maybe we don't do this, but I think this is just going to build some nice bullish structure and then continue higher. The difference here is Solana peaked shortly after this. If we just looked at the Bitcoin fractal where Bitcoin did this and it broke 20K and then ran all the way to 70K, you know, 69. You know, Solana didn't run super hard after this. If we go back to the Solana chart, where we grabbed that from. Oh, we're on the hourly, unfortunately. Zoom back out. There, this is where we grabbed it from. From the kind of the base retest of that wedge here, I mean, it ran pretty hard, actually. It still ran like a 2x. It still ended up running 172%. Yeah, this is kind of what I think is going to happen. I still think we have upside here. I think it's just going to take a while. I think the lows are very likely in, unless we just get like another nuke from this whale. But ultimately, I think price action's just fine here. Go back to prior market cycle, see if we see anything similar to this. Not really. What are my thoughts on Caspa? I just don't have the attention span for it, and I haven't been able to like see. So like, here's my problem with Caspa, and my problem with a lot of coins. Like, I should be able to have the thesis. The thesis should be like one sentence, and even better if it's like 2 words. So like Bitcoin, like why buy Bitcoin? You know, digital gold. Okay, 2-word thesis. You can explain Bitcoin to somebody with 2 words. Nobody's been able to tell me that with Caspa. Nobody's been able to say, you know, what is the thesis for Caspa? And boil it down to one, like, other than it just being another layer 1. Now, I'm not, like, in a bull market, like, Caspa will do fine. Like, a lot of these projects will go up. But I want something that has a narrative. Like XRP, banking integration. That's the thesis for XRP. Banking integration. Stable coins. Real world assets. But mainly banking integration. Ethereum. What's the thesis for stablecoin? Or what's the thesis for Ethereum? Stablecoin and DeFi adoption. Stablecoin and DeFi adoption. That is your thesis for ETH. You can articulate that in a few words. Very, very simple. XLM. Why do I like XLM? Because I like XRP. XRP beta. If I'm bullish on XRP, then XLM should follow. Right? Pepe. You can explain Pepe, like, even though Pepe's not performed the best recently, like, you can at least explain it, like, you know, ETH beta. You can say ETH beta. You can say leading meme coin on ETH. You know, similar to like Pengu right now too. I have not been able to find or articulate that for Caspa or a lot of other tokens. And I just, if I can't do that, I don't spend a lot of time on those tokens. Now, maybe I'm just unaware on Caspa, but I just don't want to put time and attention on a token that I don't like have the underlying thesis for. Like, what is going to create, like, everyone shills me Caspa, but then nobody's ever like explained to me why they're bullish on Caspa in terms of, you know, like a very easy, like, I want something that is so easy to understand that the person that has never been in crypto, when they decide to get into crypto, they're going to buy it. Like, the person that's not in crypto right now, when they come into crypto with their money, what are they going to buy? I think they're going to buy XRP. I think they're going to buy ETH. Maybe Bitcoin. I talked to somebody that has just entered crypto for the first time. They're like fit in their 50s. They're a wealthy individual. Whether you like XRP or not, they said that they've been doing their research on crypto and they bought XRP. They wanted to move 30% of their portfolio from stocks and gold and bonds. They wanted to move 30% of their portfolio exposure into crypto. And they did the research and they decided to go primarily with XRP. They also bought some ETH. They bought XRP because, and I quote, it just made more sense to them than anything else. And it was based off of banks integrating it and using it. That's it. I mean, that's really it, guys. Like, as simple as possible is the best. Simple as possible. Now, I'm not bashing Caspa. Like, I think, Caspa's got a good chart. It could do well. I'm sure there's a lot that I don't know about it. But it's like, I want to be in something that, like, anybody can understand and, like, be attracted to buying it. By the way, like, if this holds here as a low on Solana, this is, like, such a bullish low, like, on the 4-hour. If this holds, this looks great. This looks on the 4-hour, higher low, rounded low, kind of a double bottom, boxy low, right? Big push, retrace, and another low. This would be really bullish for just alts across the board. But yeah, just want to see this hold. This would be a good low to hold. Yeah, so like I never try to like bash anybody's coins. I'm sure some coins that shouldn't be in based on that logic, but I like stuff that's very easy to understand for the average person because it means they're more likely to buy it. We already looked at H-bar. You may be able to rewind the stream. But ultimately, like right now in the short term, I'm bullish H-bar, fundamentally, and I think it's got a good chart. We really just need to blast through this. We just need to blast through this. And we just want to avoid printing this, what would be a nasty looking head and shoulders. You start to see H-bar roll over here. Regardless of how I feel about it fundamentally, like that's just short term a bearish chart. And you could see a big retrace. So really important that H-bar here pushes upwards. And this is actually very similar to what we had over here. A very similar fractal. Something like that is what we'd want to see. It's not perfect, but you get the general gist of it. Something like this, where this just starts pushing up. Curve, yeah, curve has been actually pretty strong here, just flagging out. We want to see on the hourly, we want to see this higher low hold. Kind of had this double bottom here. And that's a very bullish pattern. This is a bullish pattern for anybody. A couple of bullish things that have happened here. You faded the head and shoulders. That was a head and shoulders on the hourly, got rejected. Right? We came back down to the range lows, we double bottomed. This double bottom pattern, that W double bottom is a bullish pattern. So anytime you see like right, and sometimes they actually come back down and for like a third, but that to me is bullish. And then if we can hold this low, like we're at a pretty pivotal point in the next like I want to see into the Friday close, into the evening. Like I really just don't want to see everything roll over back down to range lows. I want to see Solana hold its low. I want to see XRP hold its low. I want to see Curve hold its low. And if they do, then I actually think alts could do pretty well this weekend. If Bitcoin can just, stop selling off, which for now it's making a solid attempt here. It's moving into resistance. It needs to reclaim. It needs to push back up to 118, 119. And then we'll be back in business. Get rejected here doesn't necessarily mean it's over. It just means we're probably going lower to 112. And then we'll probably make another attempt at reclaiming. At which point, if we get rejected then it's bad news. Right? You don't want to see that. Then it's time to start getting bearish maybe in here. But this, as far as just a range deviation, is especially considering we've had a very big whale seller in the market, is fine. It's not ideal. I would have liked a larger push upwards, a tighter flag across the board on everything. But the good news here is a lot of stuff, like a lot of RSIs, have cooled down. The hourly below 50, the 4-hour below 50. XRP now. XRP could even reclaim here and then, flag out a little bit and go in early August, and, RSI will smooth out to the 50 level on the daily, and then we can really load up and go. So overall, not the worst spot at all for crypto, despite the fact that it's been a pretty brutal couple of days here. All right, guys. That's going to round it out for the stream today. Go join the towns if you want access to our community. Post all this analysis in these channels. We've got multiple analysts with channels posting analysis. So this is our paid towns community. There's a link in the description. It's 0.1 ETH for a year. I'm a big fan of this. I also think there's going to be an airdrop. I don't know if the snapshot is taken. I think there's going to be multiple rounds of airdrops. Don't quote me on that, but that's a cool way for some of the users of the platform to hopefully get some money back. Who knows what the airdrop will be worth, but join our community if you'd like to there. Keep in touch with all the channels and the analysis that we're putting out there. If you're looking for a free newsletter, we have a free newsletter option on our website, Sistine.ai. And if you're looking to trade on WeX, there's a link in the description below as well. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week. Hopefully this was helpful. If it was, drop a like.